Let's talk soup. You can have ingredients together in your life. If you were to think of it like a soup, that when life is really good, it's hard to tell which ingredient do you give the most credit to. Actually, when the soup of our lives is good, if anything, we run the risk of taking for granted the simple pleasures and the simple ingredients that God has given us. Our health, healthy family members, things going well in our job or in our careers or some part of our passions in life, things just seem to be kind of flowing and working together so well. Man, when those seasons are tasting good, that's the good soup. Many of us, from time to time, go through seasons in which really the soup is bad. You kind of start out with a base, it's just simple water. It's kind of the way it all starts out for all of us, God is compared to living water. He calls himself living water that sustains us. It's the most pure part of the entire situation. Even when the soup is bad, he's still a constant in, with, and over even the hardest times of our lives. But it becomes more complicated than that. You have your ramen, right? And that can become almost like our minds. Our minds are in this soup. And if that were the only ingredients, even if it was difficult, I think we'd begin to navigate things pretty well. But when the soup is bad, it's never just our brain and God's word and faithfulness. No, when soup is bad, it can become time that gets thrown in. It can become different kind of spices. Maybe it's garlic. For some of us, maybe it's our childhood. For some of us, maybe it was birth order. Maybe one kid was more preferred than we were. So we have this past, this history that informs the way that we think about ourselves and our place, not only in this world, but in our own families. And suddenly you just have ingredients like Italian seasoning, stuff that really doesn't even belong together in what's happening. And that's what happens in our lives. All these different things that begin to clash, that create this experience that honestly doesn't taste that good. Job and career starts to go bad. Our marriage can start to go bad. Experiences that we've had with our children, maybe they start to go really bad for us. Maybe we've experienced some kind of loss in our lives. And before you know it, what we have is this mixture that's pretty nasty. It's pretty difficult. For some of us, we might be able to also mix in something that's some other ingredient that might be our own mental health. Sometimes the way that we're chemically put together, seeing a doctor, a psychiatrist, there's medications that are really good gifts from God. So please hear that. Sometimes when it tastes really, really bad, we need to go see and talk to someone, because there could be something happening within our own body chemistry to help us sort through and strain out, by the grace of God, some of these ingredients that make this soup taste horrible. But here's what you also need to know about the soup. Yes, there's our history. Yes, there's our experiences. Yes, there's those difficult times in our marriage and our families. Yes, there may be elements of our own mental health and feelings of depression and hardship. But there's another element. And that ingredient I would call the spiritual demonic forces. It's something completely outside of ourselves, something that doesn't even belong in this soup. In this case, we'd call that like mulch and dirt. Nothing that's meant to be consumed. It could be something like hand sanitizer, something that if really you ate, you wouldn't just go from tasting bad, you'd get really ill maybe if you ate now what I've added to this soup. But that's exactly how Satan and demonic forces work. They wait for the soup to taste so bad that there's a point when you can no longer tell when one ingredient starts and another ingredient ends. And this is how Satan then leverages the soup. Check it out. So this is what begins to happen, is that there's a point where what Satan does is that in our own minds, we can't tell the difference between where one ingredient ends and another one begins. So with life, the pressures of life, the frustrations of life, the setbacks of life, Satan begins to turn up the heat. And suddenly in our minds, we can no longer tell as he begins to stir the soup of what thoughts of our own demise and our own destruction, what thoughts of our own brokenness were truly generated from within us, or at this point being fed to us. See, in the most tragic of cases, we begin to own every last thing in the soup. Yes, we're broken. Yes, we're flawed. Yes, we will think and believe things about ourselves because of all those ingredients of our past. But at some point, he'll begin to feed us thoughts and ideas that when the soup is bad enough and the heat is hot enough, we can no longer tell the difference. We no longer know how to get out. We no longer know what to do next. And the moment we reach hopelessness or despair, he has us. Here's the big lie once Satan begins to stir all of the soup in your mind, all of the horrible flavors together, some of which are from within you and some of which that have been fed to you. We don't have to be defined by this any longer because of Christ. Philippians 2:7 says that Jesus literally emptied himself out. He didn't just become the pot that is you. He became all of that stuff that's inside of you as well. He became every bit of it. And he would empty himself out in such a way that he would take everything that was you, everything that you've lived with, everything that's your shame, everything that is your guilt, everything that's plagued you in your life, all of the lies and the deception. And he emptied himself out on the cross. He took all of that. No longer are we defined by it. No longer do we have to live in shame or guilt. We get to start fresh and we get to start new. Because of Jesus and because of his grace, we no longer have to be defined by the thoughts that originate from within our broken selves or fed to us by Satan and demonic forces. Because of perfect love on the cross and perfect power in the empty tomb, we've been forgiven over all of it. We have victory over all of it. We're no longer defined by our history or our past, our thoughts or our failures. Jesus has given us victory over what's broken within us and over sin, death, and Satan. We get to start over and be filled with living water, and not just filled, but filled that our cups would overflow with the truth and the hope that's in Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone.